And we'll talk a good deal, I'm sure, about the Olympic experience, but I want to start with John Furlong from pretty much the beginning. Do you remember your first job?
Yes.
What was it?
I got fired from my first job. My mother decided it was time for me to get a job. She just didn't like the fact that we were spending the entire summer doing absolutely nothing. So I was 14, and she had a pretty good relationship with the little fish store up the street. And so she went up there, and she kind of begged the guy to take me on and to work part-time. And I've always been a very, very picky eater. People make jokes about it. And so when I went in to start the job and I looked at what he wanted me to do, which is basically to clean fish, where I was like holding the fish about 3 feet from my face, I literally couldn't stand it. And so it took maybe like a couple of shifts before he said, this just isn't going to work. And he gave me the money, and off I went. And after that, I got summer jobs, but yeah, no.
How was going home and facing your mother after that?
She's mad as heck, but she wasn't putting up with it. And then she decided that all of us had to do something. Like when my parents, their sort of plan was every year we would have a month at the beach, but everybody in the family had to contribute. So parents weren't wealthy, and so they had to contribute. So my job was to pay for some of that vacation, and so I went off picking fruit for the summer, and would get on a train in the morning and go out into the country and pick fruit all day and come back exhausted and hand the money over, and that's how we grew up. And those are my sort of memories of working as a boy.
When you look back at that, though, did that create the work ethic that you have today? Contribute to it at least?
Bill, I would say that for me, a little bit, but I would say at the core of the way I apply myself is I learned it all in the change room, and sitting there and listening to coaches talk about effort and working together and realizing that in life you're very rarely on your own, working on your own. Mm-hmm. You're always with other people, and that. The worst thing that can happen to you is somebody says to you, you're not pulling your weight, and you're not doing your part the way you should. And so sitting there and learning all those rules in ways you don't expect to learn them, and trying to apply them after. I mean, my father used to say that, at the end of the day, you can be equipped with all kinds of things, but the one thing that can separate you out from everyone else is just how hard you're prepared to pour it on, the effort you're prepared to make, the example that you're willing to be. And so I always thought that for me it was in there, and all through the years at the Olympics and in the bid phase of the Olympics and before that, I always saw those lessons as the giant lessons in my life about they just work. They were the ultimate in how you get people to do things they don't think that they can do.
Isn't it interesting to look back, and I wonder how many people listening have had this experience. You look back, and it was a coach or a phys ed teacher, a leader who taught you a lot that you've taken into life years later and look back on and gone, that was that Roger Cronquist or the
Well, I have a moment. There was one, and I remember being picked to be the captain of a team once, and it was a pretty decent team. And when I was picked, I just thought they liked me.
What kind of team?
It was a Gaelic football team, and I thought they liked me. I didn't really kind of get the captain thing, and so we had a big game and coming up pretty quickly. And I was obviously happy and proud to be asked. Didn't really understand the job really, and so we played our first game and we won it. We didn't play so well, and we came in the change room at the end of the game, and the coach went around the change room, and he just ripped everyone, and then he ripped me. And he said, it's the worst performance I've ever seen. He said things that even my own dad didn't say to me on his toughest day. And we had a team bus to drive everybody home after, and I decided to walk. I was so mortified and humiliated by the lecture. I went off and so I thought about it all week long, and I trained harder and slept more, and I just wanted to come out and never have that happen to me again. And the following Sunday, we were playing in the second round of that event, and it was a bigger game, and I was ready for that game. And I remember going out onto the field with my colleagues, and we won the game. We weren't terrific as a team, but I thought personally, I had played probably the best game of my life. I don't think I ever put more into a game. So I was kind of feeling pretty good, And so we go in the change room at the end of the game, and we're sitting there, and the coach comes in. He almost kicks the door open. He's in a rage, and he starts around the room again. And when he gets to me, he looks at me and he says, Furlong, is there a chance that you might make a contribution around here anytime soon? And I went, what are you talking about? I just killed myself, and I'd clicked. He wasn't asking me to play hard. He wasn't asking me to do anything. He said, I want you to help these guys succeed, to grow, encourage them, lift this team up when it's down. You're doing nothing for this team. You're doing it for you. And that to me was the blinding lesson of a lifetime, that I've used it often and I've talked about it often because it's the rawest way to learn. You meet young people. We had many of them at Vanoc would come in the door with fire in their eyes and with great spirit. But there's this other thing that separates you from the crowd, and that is this pure, unadulterated effort and your example to the people beside you that will cause them to get up and go. And that's, to me, was the magic of that moment. I'll never forget him. Never forget him.
But you demonstrated it throughout the lead up to the games and the games. I mean, nobody could have worked harder, really, than you did.
Well, it was interesting, I realized that when we were, especially in the bid phase, when I met, I had 2 cracks at becoming the leader of the bid and failed both times. And the first time I remember, talking about what I thought it would take for us to win. I mean, I thought always that the person who would end up running the bid and the games would be from, big construction or big government or big business. But I was from the sports system, and I was making a lot of noise about what we should do, and thought I knew a thing or two about sport and the Olympics. And I was thinking, and so I was in meetings and talking and spouting off about what I thought this could do in Canada's hands. And I thought we were shooting too low. I thought, we could take this and make it about the entire country, give this country an experience it rarely ever has of doing something together. So, and let everybody in. And I could feel at the time, there was a lot of, oh, come on, this is about us. This is about Vancouver and about British Columbia. And this is far too far a vision to be thinking about. But as we went along, and I remember explaining that vision the first time when I was being interviewed, being asked the question, so what do you think it should be? And I said, I think we need to lift every life in this country, inspire everyone, and went on and on and on for a very long time. And I could tell that people were looking at me like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And I didn't get the job. And then the next time, I still felt the same way. And then that was the time when Jack and John were put together, and Jack became the CEO and I became the COO. And I remember sitting down with Jack and saying, Jack Poole, and saying to Jack, this is what I think that, Jack was very aware, I think, of the power this had for here and for the province. And it's going to be British Columbia's day on the world stage. And I thought that imagine if British Columbia took on the responsibility of bringing the country together. Let it be us. People would say to us, they'd never do this if it was Ontario or Quebec or Calgary. Who cares? We can. And over time, I think we all began to realize that this idea of letting everybody in had some real merit. And that's where we put the flag down for that, and off we went. And in that, and at that moment, we gave the event the power it had. It was something that everybody could see was worth fighting for. So we had a vision that was causing everybody to say, I'm going to help with this thing.
So is that what won the bid?
No. Well, it was interesting. When we were bidding for the games, what was interesting was that everybody thought that they were looking at our city. I mean, we're sitting here looking out over the city today and thinking, who wouldn't vote for Vancouver? Well, the thing is, there's eight countries bidding for the games, and they all think they're as good as we are, that they have visions like ours. I mean, where do we get off thinking that they're not going to be just as good? And by the way, some of them have these amazing winter credentials. So we need to be better than that. I thought that and I think obviously the city needed to be great and we needed to have a technical plan. But in the end, we concluded, and Jack was 100% of this view as well, if they trust us and like us, we have a chance to win. Nobody is going to say to Vancouver, you can't do this. I mean, who would say that? Look around here. We've built one of the most spectacular cities in the world and in one of the greatest areas of the world. No one is going to, with any credibility, say, you can't do this? Come on. What they might say is, you're not doing it. And there's a difference. And so what we wanted to do was to get a relationship developed with them, where they saw in us a partner that would be honorable, decent, do a good job, work really hard, really embrace the global ideal of the Olympics, and be easy to be around. And so we set out to be great partners. Jack, in the very first sentence that I remember meeting with Jack, I met Jack on the morning of September 11th, the day of the bombing, and it was one of the most life-changing days for the world, but for me, meeting him and him using the word partner in a way I'd never thought about before. Because, often when you bring your partners in, you think, well, it's nice to have a partner, but we're on first, not you. You're on second. Jack's idea was everyone's on first. Everyone's a partner. So you don't invite somebody to play unless they're actually really fully in the game and they have the right to have the full reward that comes with that. He believed that we could have dozens and dozens of partners, but we had to treat them like they were absolute family, and we did.
Much more with John Furlong next.
Radius Security is one of the few companies that install, monitor, and maintain their systems. And unlike most security companies, their monitoring station is located right here in the Lower Mainland. Listen in this Saturday on Talk to the Experts with Radius Security to find out how you can get a free surveillance camera valued at $300. RadiusSecurity.ca.
Daytona.
Inventory. Searching for a pre-owned ride? Check out the selection that takes the checkered flag. Daytona Auto Sales in Surrey. Lots of quality rides that everyone can afford. Most vehicles are under $10,000 and their financing pit crew isn't afraid to get dirty to get you driving. Get the most car for your dollar and a green light on credit approval. Daytona Auto Sales. Fraser Highway near 84th and DaytonaAuto.net.
How old is your mattress?
I can't remember.
Wouldn't a luxurious new pillow top mattress be wonderful?
I wish.
During our annual pillow top sale, a whole lot of wishes are coming true.
Sleep Country negotiated extra discounts from some of the top brands.
Right now, we've got some of our best prices of the year on selected pillow top and Eurotop mattresses.
But these savings won't last long.
Get the pillow top
And the deep, restful sleep you really want.
right now at Sleep Country.
Why buy a mattress anywhere else?
That truck behind you may not be road safe. Heavy truck traffic has increased almost 50% in the past decade. Some of these trucks aren't safe and should be taken off the road. But with 1 in 4 commercial vehicle inspector jobs vacant, there aren't enough of them to do the work. For your safety and your family's, demand the government hire more inspectors. Visit roadsafebc.ca for more information.
When Dad broke his hip, we thought that's it. He's going to have to move to a care home now, leave his neighborhood, his garden, his dog. But then we found out about Bayshore Home Health and how they offer all kinds of specialized in-home care services. So we set up daily visits, and when Dad was released, he got to go home, to his home. And all of us, including the dog, are very happy about that.
Bayshore Home Health. Better care for a better life. Bayshore.ca.
Talking with John Furlong, who was the Chief Executive Officer of Vanoc, the organization that created and managed the Olympic Games. You were talking about Jack Poole and the influence he had on you, but you also had a tremendous amount to do with the culture of Vanoc.
Yep.
What did you try to, from day one, what did you try to instill as the culture? Because that's a big part of the leadership role.
Well, when we were, do you remember the time there was quite a controversy about who would lead the games? And to this day, I don't know who the other candidates were. But when I was interviewed about how would we do it, I sort of took the position of saying, well, look, I've gone back and looked at all the games before us, and all of them have had problems. All of them have had leadership changes. And so I think we need to do it differently. I think we need to abandon this traditional hierarchy that's existed for the Olympics and put together a bulletproof juggernaut team of people who actually know how to be a real team. So, and I said, because here's the thing, if we don't do that and we start the way we're going to start, as if we were back in any Olympics over the last 10, here's what's going to happen. I'll put in 2 years, and then you'll come along and you'll say, now we're going to get somebody who actually really knows how to do this. And I'm really not up for that. So what I want to try to do is to find like-minded people of great character, bring them together, and try together to build this team that will be able to withstand absolutely anything, and that we will build out from there, because at some point we're going to be about 50,000 people in all of the various areas. And what we're going to do over all this time is practice teamwork to really build a culture that can stand up to anything that comes our way.
Did you had a lot of opposition, a lot of critics?
Tons of opposition. I think at that time, there were serious question marks about whether or not this would work. And also I think there were probably a lot of people thought, well, we will have time to fix it if it doesn't work. Because there were some people who thought, having we won the games and, maybe give them a chance or something. And it was very controversial and it started rather badly. But I thought if we could bring a group of people together, find the right ones, that what would happen is that instead of it always being about whoever the CEO was, that if you came to take us on, you'd be taking on a much more sophisticated organization. We'd have a real team. And we spent all of those years up to the very end practicing to be the team we needed to be for 2 weeks. I mean, our management meetings were stunning. We put ourselves through almighty chaos to get good at the job. I used to laugh, if the head of technology was sitting here, and I used to listen to him telling the story about, we would have an event in Whistler, and a skiing event, and we would be, the event would be staged to test our results system. And the people would have worked forever to prepare for this. And then another team would go out there and wreak havoc on these guys to see if they could actually survive it. And so we were always throwing ourselves under the bus to get good at what we were going to do. Now, did we think that the things we were practicing against would repeat themselves during the games? Probably not, but we were trying to build real character so that when we got confronted by a vicious attack or headwind, that we could stand up and be ready for it. And we had many of them. We had the economic downturn that was an absolute nightmare to manage through. And we knew that at one point people were saying, well, what do we care? There's a guarantee on the games. And, if we have a deficit, and our team is looking and saying, no one in Canada will forgive us if we don't deliver the games. Doesn't matter that it's tough. So we had to withstand that. We had to figure out how to get through that. So we had the culture, the people, the effort. We were just not going to be beaten by it. And then when the games came, we went into the period of the Olympics thinking that we would have any amount of snow on Cypress Mountain, and we had none. And it was like I've said many times, it was like God himself was looking down on us and saying, anybody can put on the Olympics with snow. Try doing it with no snow. And so we actually ended up in that situation of having to invent a solution out of nothing with a team of people who were already exhausted. And then on the opening day of the games, when the toughest decision I thought I would be making that day would be, what to wear that night, and losing Nodar Kumaratashvili that morning, and realizing that was a hit on everybody. It hit the country, it hit us, and I realized over those few days that this was something no one had ever contemplated. I mean, Bill, when we were going into the period of the games, we had a whole list of the worst things that could happen. These weren't on them. Yeah.
Much more with John Furlong just ahead. Talking with John Furlong in our series on chief executives. Other chief executives come up through the ranks generally. You became kind of an overnight CEO of one of the biggest projects anybody on the planet could have to manage. And yet you totally did it. You talked just before the news, you talked about the death of the young Georgian. I thought that in a strange way was a real turning point for the Olympics, because I felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach. I could only imagine what you felt like. People might not remember. This was the opening day of the Olympics. This was our first day on the world stage. And something so terrible happened that you hadn't even imagined it as one of the things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
And yet you managed it in magnificent fashion, if I do say so.
Well, Thank you, Bill. Well, the thing about that, first of all, even though we practiced for everything, you never allow your head to go to this kind of everything. I mean, who would have said, how do you practice for that? And obviously, it never dawned on me that we would ever be faced with such a thing. And on that morning when Dave Cobb phoned me and said, we've had this accident, and it was the most extraordinary call. I mean, I was stunned. But in my heart, I thought, because we had fantastic medical people, a great team, that they'd save Nodar. I just believed they would save him. That it may be bad news, but he'd go home to his family. And I took a bit of comfort from the fact, and I knew they'd be fighting to do it. But the call came a half an hour later, and Dave said, "John, I'm sorry, but Nodar has died." And it's the worst phone call I've ever had. And I have to say that at that moment, I didn't have any idea what to do, not a clue. And I sat there thinking, oh my God, everything has changed, and we've lost this boy who came here. He was like the hopes and dreams of Georgia, and a great story, and a happy boy, was starting out in his career, and he's going to go home to his family this way. And I was lost. And I closed the door in my office that day, and I was thinking to myself, now what? What are you going to do? And two things struck me. Personally, first of all, you have a duty to his family. That has to become number one. And number two, you have a duty to the country to represent the country properly now, because Canadians will expect a Canadian response to this. This can't be finessed in any way, and this can't be sort of put away for later. It's just right now. This happened. It's ours. And so I sat there, and obviously a lot of things were going on, and I've forgotten the whole day, and I've actually never watched the opening ceremonies to this day, because it was just that kind of day. I've got very few memories that kind of really, other than sitting down with the IOC and talking about changes that we would need to make, and being full of this, what do you say about this? And David Atkins, to his great credit, he reorganized a way for us to properly honor Nodar.
He was the producer of the opening ceremony.
Yeah, and did a great job. And as you know, the Georgians got a standing ovation that night, which was fantastic, which also was a message that the country was grieving, to me. And that night, standing in the wings, I remember the presentation I'd worked on for a long time. The only part of it that was really worrying me was this part when we got to it. And I just wanted to say to people watching what Canadians would say if anybody was standing there. And I was really afraid that it wouldn't do a good job. And so I wanted to do that well. And then my preoccupation after that was to look after whatever that family needed from us. And they wanted him home. So, which meant that Canadians had to rally and take care of all of the things that need to happen because of a death like this in our country, which would typically take nearly a week. And they came from everywhere, all the medical people, and they did all their stuff, and they certified Nodar to go home. And I was asked to be a pallbearer at that little service that Monday morning, and the weekend was awful. I mean, our team was lost. I felt like I was letting them down, but I also had this, and I just hoped that they would somehow scramble. But I think across the organization we were really wounded. And in the streets, though, people were getting into the games. We'd won a few medals. But on Monday morning, something really profound happened for me. I went to the little service and saw Nodar there. And when we lifted him up and to take him outside after the little service and put him into the hearse, the Vancouver police had come with their motorcycle team and escort. And I thought it was just the most fabulous gesture for them, thoughtful. And
because you didn't ask them to do it.
Yeah, and I would have been probably the one who would have asked, and I didn't think to ask. And I went over to thank them, and I looked at the sergeant who was leading them, and he was all welled up, and they were all grief-struck. And I realized, everyone is cheering for us, and we can't even see it. We were almost thinking like we felt we'd let everyone down, and that somehow this was, we had promised this great thing, and it wasn't going very well. And so I went downtown and we had our team, and I remember, I don't know the exact words I used, but I said to them, today's the day we got to show this country we deserve to call ourselves leaders, and we have to inspire our team and get up from this and fight back and, support everybody and fix the little things that aren't perfect and give the country the experience that they've been waiting for. And I would typically, as the CEO, had to look after visiting dignitaries from all over, which is work that neither Jack and I particularly like doing, but I would have, and Jack was regrettably gone, and we would have argued over that part. But I realized that this is not work for me now. Now is we got to get our team back on its feet and support them. So I I did what I consider to be the best thing I've ever done in my lifetime. Every day at 4 a.m, I got out of bed, got picked up, and I went from venue to venue to venue, and I congratulated and hugged and pushed our team to keep going and keep going and keep going.
And you say team, you referring to the volunteers, the Blue Jackets?
Yeah, and looked them in the eye, and you could tell that they were proud and they were doing heroic things, and they were working in tough conditions. And up on Cyprus, where they had overcome this amazing miracle, challenge that they'd had, and we were getting momentum, and you could feel that after this blight at the beginning with the British press, ripping us and everything, that they had actually decided, not on our watch, we're going to confront this, and they did, and so they were very proud, and I just wanted to keep that momentum going to the end, because in my heart I believed, you know what, we've put in years and years and years. The laws of natural justice are going to take over here soon, and we are going to have the finish that everyone has wanted.
I will never forget being out at night, every night at 11 o'clock at night, doing the news with Pamela Martin on Robson Street, and seeing tens of thousands of people, families, out on the street for every day of the games. And I remember vividly Lloyd Robertson saying, I think it was on the closing day, no government, no big company, nobody asked people to come out and do this. They just did it.
Yeah.
Canadians chose to participate in that way, and they did it. I mean, they were led by you, they were led by the torch relay, all of that played into it, but people just genuinely got into it.
Yeah, they did. And it was interesting because when we were planning for the games, we actually realized that if we don't create an environment, we'll have two groups of people in Vancouver, those who have tickets and those who don't. And that's not a fun thing to have. So we wanted to give people this opportunity, and we believed if they had it, they would take full advantage. A lot of people didn't think so. And we even argued with the IOC months before the games that we had too many of these sites. And so they would argue with us and our management team, you have too many sites, they're too big, you're going to get embarrassed. And we would look at them and say, we don't have enough and they're not big enough, because the public wants to enjoy this.
We do have to get to the Whitecaps.
Yes.
And not to mention my Vanity Fair questions.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Talking with John Furlong, former CEO of Vanoc, now executive chair of the Vancouver Whitecaps. How's that going?
Oh, it's great fun. I mean, I still kind of pinching myself that I'm doing it, and very happy to be doing it, because it's a great little organization that's got great owners, and they got great inspiration. And, I was saying that when I took it on, I mean, it's one thing to be working to put a great team on the field, but when you work with owners everywhere say many of the same things about giving back and doing things for the community, but these owners that really believe in kids and children and growing players and growing talent, and in our case they believe they have a duty to do it, and it's not an easy thing to do, in a country this size. But if you were, when I met with Greg and the others, listening to them, Greg Kerfoot, and listening to them talk about how important it was to have that balance between having a team that was the mirror image of the values of the organization, but at the same time to be creating a relationship with the community where every single child, wherever they are in the province, grows up wanting to be a Whitecap, that they look at us and they say, this is all I want to be. And so this investment in community building and growing, and wanting absolutely nothing in return for it, just to know that they're doing it. And it's like, it makes you feel like you're doing something that actually really counts. And so it's a lot of fun, and I hope over time that we will actually get to a stage where we're competing in the Champions League. We're one win away from it right now if we beat Toronto next week, and that we will regularly get to represent the country, and that the team will become this great shining example, but at the same time we will cause kids everywhere to aspire to play the game. That's the easiest game to get into, and it's the only game that's played in every country in the world. So it's a lot of fun. We have great people.
Now to the Vanity Fair segment of the program. Are you reading a book right now?
I'm reading a book called Calico Joe by John Grisham. It's a book about redemption. It's a baseball story. I'm halfway into it. It's a lot of fun. I'm not really sure where it's all headed, but it's a wonderful book, and I just picked it up while I was traveling because I left my other books at home, and so I'm enjoying that, and it's always nice to pick up books about sport and learn something new.
Now, if you could have dinner with any four people, living or dead, who would they be and why?
Well, first of all, I would have dinner with my mother and father, because it was the one regret I had at the games is if Mom and Dad had been there, they never would have believed what their son was involved in. They just wouldn't have. My dad would have just sat there and his jaw would have dropped. But just to know that they saw that would have been great. And my sister Rosemary died from lupus at age 40, and I'd been to Ireland before and told her we were actually trying to do this. And at the moment I said to her we were going to do it, she turned to her husband and she said, "That's it. We're going to start saving to go to Vancouver. They're going to get the games." And it was long before we got the games, and I miss her. She was a great friend as well. And then the last is Jack. You know, the thing about Jack and I, we had a great friendship, and sitting at the opening ceremonies without him was a real empty. And on the day we had, it was one of the worst experiences, largely because Jack had this incredible ability of lifting burdens away from people, and just to sit with him and see the pleasure in his eyes about, you know, for what was going on, and to witness the games with him was losing him was. It was the worst thing, because he deserved to be there to feel the shine that the games had and the glow, and I really believe to this day that Jack closed his eyes for the last time knowing we were actually up and running. You know, we had picked up the flame. We were on our way down the highway back to Athens when we talked to him on the phone. Took our first leg home to come and see him, actually, to bring video and pictures to show him what had taken place, and then we got the phone call and I think he sort of felt my work is done. But I would love to have sat there with him just to feel, you know, just to see the pleasure in his eyes. And I sat with Darlene, we sat together, and he deserved, you know, to see that. And you know, Jack had this amazing way of entering into a situation that was full of stress and somehow managed to reduce it to nothing. Somehow. It was still somewhere, but he seemed to make it feel like it was no longer a big deal. And I loved that about him, and he was just a fantastic guy.
I can't believe how fast the time has come and gone, but I thank you for coming in today.
Pleasure. Thank you. It was enjoyable.